GoForThe2.com, and with the Week 13 predictions, going to be more of a rapid-fire breakdown for the college football predictions, week number 13. If you want all the news and analysis of all the top 25 games through Thanksgiving, straight through this coming Saturday, tune into Carver and Lisi Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. We're not going to be on Thanksgiving night or the day after on Friday, so tune into Carver and Lisi Tuesday and Wednesday this week, 10 p.m. through midnight Eastern, Sirius Channel 159 and SportsGridRadio.com. You could also pick up the podcast on iTunes. And then College Football Today, Saturday morning for Week 13, 9 a.m. through noon Eastern, SportsGridRadio.com, Sirius Channel 159. I'll elaborate throughout these shows on all these picks, the top 25 battles, and any game you want to talk about. You could always hit me up on Twitter at GoForThe2, the number 2. Going to be an abbreviated rapid-fire video. So here we go. Kansas State laying 11.5 against the Jayhawks. We saw Kansas get absolutely boat raced by Texas. We laid the 9.5 last week. Bijan Robinson, that rushing attack of Texas, rushed for over 300 yards on the front seven. It's been back-to-back weeks now that Kansas has allowed well over 250 yards to both Texas Tech and now Texas, respectively. Kansas State playing for potentially a Big 12 title appearance to get the win and cover over Garrett Green and West Virginia. All signs point to the Kansas State Wildcats in this ballgame, but we've seen now Kansas walk through the motions. They sort of seem worn out. This is a perfect opportunity to bounce back in a big way. They're going bowling. Lance Leipold catching points as an underdog in a rivalry game. I think the Jayhawks are live here. I think they give it their best effort, make it a 4-quarter game, and I think they cover the 11.5-point number against the Kansas State Wildcats this coming weekend. Other battle takes place, ACC, SEC. Georgia Tech gets the win and cover. Outright win and cover over Drake May in North Carolina, catching 21.5. They win the ball game outright 21-17. Backup fourth-string quarterback. He leads the upset on the road. That Georgia Tech defense stepped up, made Drake May work down the field, and now they face the top team in the nation, their arch rival, the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia walked through the motions potentially through the first half. They opened up a 9-0 first half lead. They extended it to 16-0, give up a late touchdown to Will Levis, and they hold on 16-6. They do not cover the 22.5-point number. We talked about back-to-back road games for Georgia. That could have been a potential spot for Kentucky to step up, and they didn't disappoint. They gave it their best effort. But when you look at this rivalry in recent years, it's been owned by the Georgia Bulldogs. They won this ball game last year 45-0. We have a fourth-string quarterback going up against that secondary, that front seven of Georgia. This game's going to be won or lost in the trenches. I expect the Georgia Bulldogs to force turnovers against the inexperience of the Yellow Jackets in terms of the passing attack, fourth-string quarterback. And I think Georgia rolls, even though it's a big number, 35.5. I think the Georgia Bulldog defense carries them and covers this number in Athens and Sanford Stadium Saturday afternoon. Lay the 35.5 with the Bulldogs. Big battle in the Iron Bowl. We saw Alabama struggle in the first half against Austin Peay. They had a 17-0 first half lead. They pulled away in the second half. But this is an Alabama team that 2 weeks ago didn't cover against Ole Miss. They trailed for much of the first half, found a way to pull that ball game out. On the flip side, we have Auburn now playing with house money under Cadillac Williams. They get the win a couple of weeks ago as a favorite. Texas A&M, they cover that ball game and win 13-10. They follow that up as a 5.5-point favorite against Western Kentucky and win 45-17. They pushed Alabama to the limit last year as a 19.5-point underdog. 4 overtimes, they lose by 2. I don't think Alabama's forgotten that. The fact that it's an interim staff going up against Nick Saban. Nick Saban and Alabama have only lost one game, and Brian Denny since 2016 came to the hands of Joe Burrow and the LSU Tigers. This line is 22.5 in most books in New Jersey. I think Alabama covers this in a big way. I think they take away Robbie Ashford in terms of the RPO game, force Robbie Ashford to beat them over the top and make them one-dimensional, and I think that's what the defense can do in this matchup. I'm not feared by Auburn's rushing attack. I think they'll take that away and force Auburn into long third downs. That's where this game is going to be won or lost. I think Bryce Young could have a huge performance against that secondary of Auburn. I think Alabama covers this number fairly easy Saturday afternoon in Tuscaloosa. In terms of the spread perspective, I think they win it anywhere from 28 to 30 points against the Tigers. Two rivalry games. We have Miami catching 6.5 against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh got the win. No cover against Duke. They laid 6.5. They win 28-26. Miami catching 18.5, 19, goes on the road to Death Valley and loses 40-10. They need one game in terms of this victory to become bowl eligible. The Hurricanes do. They're only 2-9 against a number, but they have traditionally played Pittsburgh very tough. They abused them a couple of years ago in South Beach with a backup quarterback. I think this is an opportunity for Miami speed to show out, playing at home to become bowl eligible. I think the Hurricanes strike the upset over Narduzzi and the crew. The other game takes place in the Big Ten. Michigan State catching a huge number against Sean Clifford and Penn State. Penn State got the win and cover on the road in Rutgers, laying 19, won that ball game and put up a 55 spot. They come back home laying 18.5 against the Spartans, but we saw Michigan State cover in terms of the 17.5 point, 18-point spread a few weeks ago against one of the best secondaries in the Big Ten in terms of Illinois. They won the ball game outright. They put up 182 passing yards and 2 touchdowns on that. Illini secondary struggled last week with Indiana, but going on the road to Penn State, they won this ball game at home in East Lansing, catching 18.5 with the veteran coach in terms of Mel Tucker, a veteran quarterback in Peyton Thorne. I think Michigan State could be well within the 18.5 point number Saturday afternoon in Happy Valley. Florida catching 9.5 against the Seminoles Friday night. We talk about Billy Napier as an underdog, not as good as a favorite. He lost a ball game outright to Vanderbilt, but that's a Vanderbilt team now that has put back-to-back conference wins against Kentucky and Florida now. But Florida State is a heated rivalry. We have Anthony Richardson, a mobile quarterback, in Napier that is undefeated this year, 3-0 ATS as an underdog, catching 9.5. I think he could be live on the road in Tallahassee Friday night, like the Gators, to cover the 9.5 point number against a red-hot Florida State offense and defense heading into this matchup. Big ball game, Kentucky and Louisville. Louisville stepped up last week against NC State. We also saw Kentucky get the cover, but no win against Georgia. Now they're laying 3 points to the Cardinals. The Cardinals have stepped up and played much better defensively, but the uncertainty of Malik Cunningham is a huge concern. I think this game comes down to the offense and defensive lines. I still favor the Kentucky Wildcats and the Kentucky secondary going up against the Louisville offense. I think Kentucky gets back to running the football. You watched this ball game last year. Louisville did not have an answer in terms of the rushing attack of both Will Levis and Chris Rodriguez. We saw Will Levis run a little bit more against Georgia last week. I think it continues this week, and I think Kentucky covers the 3 point number against Louisville this coming weekend. So those are the picks for this coming Saturday. I'll run through them, 7 picks. We'll go through it right now. Kansas plus the 11.5. Georgia minus the 35.5. Alabama minus the 21.5. We have Miami plus the 6.5. Michigan State plus the 18.5. Florida plus the 9.5. And Kentucky minus the 3 for this coming weekend. Those are both Friday and Saturday picks. I'll go through them again so you have them, and you could follow all the games and analysis. Carver and Lisi Tuesday and Wednesday this week, 10 p.m. through midnight, and College Football Today this coming Saturday, 9 a.m. through noon. So here are the picks for Week 13. Kansas plus the 11.5 against Kansas State. Georgia minus the 35.5 against Georgia Tech. Alabama minus the 21.5, 22 against Auburn. Miami plus the 6.5 against Pittsburgh. Michigan State plus the 18.5 against Penn State. Florida plus the 9.5 against Florida State. And Kentucky laying the 3 against Louisville. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I'll see you on Saturday.